Okay, folks, we're going to get into lesson 2 of the number system, ordering decimals and percents. And we're going to go through this. And I know it's Friday, and I want to make sure that you understand how to order these decimals and percents and rational numbers and so on. All right, so let's get rolling with this. Okay, so decimals and integers are both classified as rational numbers. And remember, a rational number is where you can put a number in fraction form, a over b, where b, the bottom number, the numerator, does not equal 0. So let's take a look at this set here. The first number I see is 6. 6 is what we call a whole number. -5 and 7/10. You see, it's a decimal, so it is rational. The next one is -31. -31 would be classified as an integer because integers are whole numbers and their opposites or negatives. 0 is a whole number. Remember, it is 0, neither positive or negative. 17 and 2/10 is certainly a rational number. 25, we would consider that as a whole number. 42 and 4/10 is a rational number. And finally, we end up with 100, and that's certainly going to be a whole number. So again, whole numbers, their opposites are integers, and then any decimal, all right, would be a rational number. We also have irrational numbers that we're not really responsible for, and I'm not going to take the time to get into that, but there are irrational numbers, and those are non-repeating and non-terminating decimals. But again, we will talk about that maybe later down the line. Each number belongs in a specific location on the number line. Place the following decimals on the number line. Okay. Here we go. Let me make sure I'm okay with my camera here. -8 and 7/10. So -8 and 7/10. Here's -8. It's going to be a little bit greater than that. So I'm going to put a dot there and put a letter A. Remember, that's -8 and 7/10. 5 and 6/10. So I'm going to come between 5 and 6. Here's halfway. So I know it's a little bit bigger than halfway. I'll call that B right there. -1 and 1/10 will be right next to 1, and that will be letter C. Letter D is 3 and 4/10. Here's 3, here's 4. Halfway, a little bit less than halfway is D. And then finally, E is 9 and 3/10. So I go between 9 and 10. Here's halfway, a little bit less, somewhere in that regards. And those are approximations. Okay? Okay, so the next part, order the following numbers from least to greatest. When I always come to those types of problems, I certainly underline that. It says I don't want to make a mistake, a silly mistake. So least to greatest. So the bigger the negative, the smaller it is. So we're certainly going to start with -6, and I'm going to draw a line. All right, the next smallest number would be, there it is, 3 and 9/10. And if you needed help, you could focus on this number line up here. The next one would be what? 4. And then 4 and 6/10, and then 16. Okay. So now, again, we're going to get into another problem where we have to order the numbers from least to greatest. These were all integers or whole numbers. I guess there was a rational there. I'm sorry. And there's going to add a few more rational numbers. Okay. Least to greatest. Remember, we have two negatives. So the bigger the negative, the smaller it is. So I'm going to start with -7. Certainly, this is the next smallest number. Now, we need to look at these very closely. 17 is certainly going to be our biggest number, so it would be over here. So I'm not going to worry about that number, but I'm going to focus here. And when I compare two decimals, sometimes when they're really close, what I'll do is I'll list them vertically. And that helps me because I can compare the 1 and the 1. Here's this, oh, right here, this is smaller than that. Right? So I know that is the next smallest number, and that's a rational number, sure. I'm going to cross that off. Certainly is 1 77 hundredths, and then 17. Okay, so that's the first part of the handout. Let's flip the page over and take a look at the back side. Okay, all right, so when we take a look at the back side, we're going to deal with some percents back here. And there you go. You can see it now. Percents can also be ordered, but they must be converted to decimals, right? Easy, very easy to change a percent to a decimal. A percent to a decimal, we move that decimal point 2 places to the left. You have to know that. Your calculator will do it, but it's a lot easier just to do it, move it 2 places. So convert a percent to a decimal by moving the decimal 2 places to the left. Very simple. 50%, the decimal's there. To the left is 5 tenths. Some would keep the 0. That's fine as well. 68 hundredths would be, 68% would be 68 hundredths. 19% would be 19 hundredths. Now, this is a unique one here, isn't it? 33 3/10% repeating. If I move that 2 to the left, I end up with just 3/10 repeating. You see that 3 carries forever. 188%. So now we're dealing with percents greater than 100. So we're still going to move it to the left, and we're going to just end up with a whole number. So I have 1 88 hundredths. 2 to the left. 2 37 hundredths. Be careful here because we're going to have to annex some zeros. 0.9%. Still move it 2 to the left, you see. It was here 1, annex a 0, 2, right? And that's 9 thousandths. And finally, 100% is 1 whole, right? 1, 2. If I wanted to, I could put that decimal point right there. But we usually don't write 1 like that. We just write 1 like so. Okay. All right, we're doing pretty well here. Converting a decimal percent to a decimal, we're just moving it 2 to the left. All right, now the next part. Order the following from least to greatest. And again, circle that, underline that, make sure that you remember that. Now, look what we have here. We have percents and decimals. So what I would recommend is changing them all to a decimal. Okay, so let's take a look at this. So 55% is 55 hundredths. And 100% is, we saw that back up here, was 1. Now, I'm just going to kind of separate these, 67 hundredths and 1.24. Let me scoot that over just a little bit so it's a little cleaner. All right, now, we want at least to greatest, okay? So when we're looking at this, we have no negative numbers, but we do have this rational number, and it's 55 hundredths. So that clearly is going to be the smallest, 55 hundredths, and I'm going to draw a line. The next one would be 67 hundredths because it's still less than 1. And now we're down to these two. 1 would be next, and 1 24 hundredths. We're rolling right along here. Let's go ahead and take a look at the next part. Excuse me, I need to move that up. Okay, so this is already, but remember that is a negative number. Here's a 2. Here's negative 50%. So I'm going to preface that with negative. And then I'm also going to move that 2 to the left, and I'm going to end up with negative 5 tenths. And then finally, 1 5 tenths. So I've converted all of these to a decimal. I've got them all apples to apples. I had an orange up here, and I changed it to a decimal. Okay, no problem. So when I look at this, all right, I need the smallest number. The smallest number I see here is the biggest negative right there. So it's negative 75 hundredths. Cross it off maybe. Next one is negative 5 tenths. Certainly 1 5 tenths, and then the number 2. And there you go. All right, so we're winding down here for the last two problems. We're doing pretty well. So hopefully I'm not going too fast and you're able to see this as I work along with you. But number 14 reads, the following numbers are placed on the number line. Okay. Which of the following best represents letter A? Well, letter A is between -1 and -2. So it's actually smaller than -1 and greater than -2. So what I'm looking for is a negative integer. So that would take that would take this out of the equation. All right. And if we look at this is split into three sections, 1, 2, 3. So this is split into thirds. So that's why we have this third. So I have -1 and a third. So it's -1 and a third is right here. Okay. Hi, Mr. Patterson. I'll be right with you in a second. And then let's take a look at the last one, number 15 here. All right. Julian tracks his progress on his reading quizzes over a period of 4 weeks. Which list shows his scores from greatest to, see what they did? They tried to trick us here. They went greatest to least. And then back up there, they went least to greatest. That's why I always circle that. Okay, so we want to look at this. Which list shows his scores from biggest to smallest? Okay, so let's go ahead and see if we can identify all this and kind of get it into maybe apples to apples. So I've got a percent, I've got a decimal, I've got two fractions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and change these all to decimals. So that's 75 hundredths. 9/10, I can do that in my head, is 9/10. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go ahead and grab my calculator to save a little bit of time. And I'm going to put 17/20. And I'm going to go ahead and change that. And we know how to do that, second n/d. And we end up with 85 hundredths. So that helps us, doesn't it? So now we're comparing all decimals. And we want the biggest decimal first. Well, clearly it's going to be 9/10, which is week 2. So that takes care of this one. Can't be that one. And that starts with, so we have week 2. So the next one will have to be week 1, right? It's the next biggest one. So week 2, week 1. Oh, now we have to go to the third one here. So what is bigger? Certainly week 3 is bigger. So we're looking at letter B. So letter B is going to be the answer to number 15. So that guided you through the packet there. Your homework's going to be in the folder. Go ahead and take a look at the folder and click on it and make sure you submit it. And have a good day, guys. I'll see you.